here. So always bean classes references need to create in between form beans and form beans. Here we have a child tag, form bean reference name. That's a simple employee form emp employee form, and the class name you should configure by using type attribute, and the package name is form beans, and your class name employee. So your bean reference emp. Just we have to create reference here, bean reference. Then next you have to provide mappings. To provide mappings, the main important tag is here, to provide mappings, action mappings. In between this action mappings and action mappings, what we have to map? Form to bean, bean to form. So here to map form to bean, action path, my form action is registration, but must I need to put slash first. Slash registration. Whenever the request is from this slash registration, I need to map to what? My bean class. So that bean class reference name you should configure here. My bean reference name is what? emp. Just I want to populate in this same bean. That emp reference you have to pass here. And if you want to execute validations in your class, in this bean class, if you want to execute validations, there we have an attribute validate. Validate equal to, if you configure true, by default it is true, we don't need to configure it also. By default it is true. By default it is true. And if validations executes, if it find any error messages, it need to return that error messages to same input form. So that input form name you should configure here by using attribute input. The form name is what? Index.jsp. That's it. Now form to bean, then bean to form. Two ways configurations. One is our form to bean, the next bean to again form to populate error messages. This form name you should configure to populate what? Error messages. After completion of validation errors, to populate validation errors, we require to configure this page here. That's it. We don't have any action class, means controller class, right? Without having controller also you can test it. And from where it need to read error messages? It need to read error messages, right? From messages properties file. That properties file name you should configure here. Message hyphen resources parameter. You can configure here your properties file. Base name only we should configure here. Base name only we should configure here. To support I18N, we have to use only base name. Base name means without dot properties extension. Only base name we should configure here. Simple registration form example. Always we should create a dynamic web project. Create a dynamic web project and some registration form example. Create project, simple registration form, and for this project you need to add struts dependencies. Struts jar files we require to add here. So which version? The last release from struts1x is struts 1.3.10. The last release from struts. The last release. Struts last release, EOL release is 1.3.10. After that they announced it as end of life. So you can download that library and add to your class path. Along with adding to class path, put one set of dependencies into library. Okay, inside library also just keep that same jar files. And you can create first input page. Go to web content, right click, new input page, JSP file, index.jsp, finish. So by using which tags we need to create this input form? Struts tags. Tag lib URI http:// struts.apache.org./tags-html. Put one prefix name here, HTML. This name is your choice. You can pass any name. It is not constant. Okay, you can use any name here. Just if you want to use H, you can go through H. And create form here. Employee, okay, simple registration form. Here create form first, HTML:form. Form must need to contain a action. Put action reg, and method, by default method is get. If you want to make it post also, you can make it post here. Okay, any method you can configure. And you can create a table here. If you are interested to put data in between table, you can create table here. Actually table is recommended tag. For creating forms, table is recommended one. So create a table with multiple TRs. And for each field we required one label name and one text box. So put multiple TDs here. Actually I required one more TD to populate error messages. One TD is for label name, for name, email kind of names, and one TD is for text boxes, and one field is for populating error messages. Create 3 TDs for each field. Okay, just I'll go through simple properties. One is ID and one name. Just I'll go through simple email and one address. Okay, if you required more, you can. Gender, gender male, gender female, and hobbies. Okay, so for this ID we required a text box. Create the text box here, HTML:text, and the text property here, which property we need to use? Bean property. The same property names we have to maintain under bean. The same ID bean property we should maintain under bean. Okay, and one more TD we have here, right? In the TD you can configure HTML:errors to populate error messages. So here error property name also you can configure. So this property name and here this property name should equal. So here if I use error underscore, ID underscore E, if I use, here also I need to put ID underscore E. So I'll use some different names here, ID underscore E. So this same name we have to use here to add error messages. And for name, one text box, HTML:text, property name, and to populate error message, HTML:error, name underscore E. For email, email underscore E. For address, address underscore E. And for gender, one is enough. So configure for one, gender underscore E. And for hobbies, list of hobbies we need to put, right? So yeah, so email over, name over email text box. For email colon text property email. And for address we required what? Simple text is not enough, right? Text area, take property address. Okay, and for gender HTML colon radio property gender value, for one is male and one is female. For female, change value here to female, and again error not required here. Okay, one time you just populate, one error is enough. And for hobbies we required HTML colon checkboxes, checkbox property some hobbies, and hobbies values you can pass here. Value you can pass hobby1, hobbies value hobby2, reading books. Okay, you can have multiple hobbies here. Okay. We require 2 right here. One is for label name, one is for checkbox, and one is for to print error message, HTML colon errors, property hobby error message, hobby underscore error. Yeah, create one more hobby here. One more tr, in the td this hobby is not required. Put same property hobbies value hobby2, put here your required hobby, reading books. So error tag not required again here. One time you just print on one place. And finally we required what? Submit button. HTML colon submit. For submit property not required, you can put value registered. That's it. Now finally how many properties? We have an ID, name, email, address, 4, 5, 6. So by using the 6 properties, create one bean class here. Create a package, form beans, write a class, new form bean class, employee, extend it from action form, and in this bean private string, name, email, address, gender, and we have an integer type ID, and we have one string array type. It's a hobbies, right? And finally what we have to generate? Setters and getters. Right click on this form, go to source option, select generate getters and setters, select all, and here access modifier it should be public. Finish. Then after generating getter setters, override one method, validate method, input parameters are action mapping and request. And here what we need to do, first we should create an action error object, then next check conditions. If id is 0, if name contains empty string, if email, if it have any empty string, if address, if gender, and if hobbies length less than 1. Add error messages. From where we need to read at that error messages? From properties file. And finally we have to return action error object. So in case of id 0, add error message to your action error object. ae dot add of key is id underscore e, right? And the message we need to read from properties file by using action message. New action message of key you should pass here. Message 1 for property id. id underscore e, new action message of pass key message 1. And for name underscore e message 2. For email underscore e message 3. Address message 4. Gender message 5. And for hobbies message 6. So 6 messages finally you should configure under properties file. Create a properties file here, use one package or resources, create here one properties file. The file name can be anything. You just create a file messages dot properties, put messages here. Message 1 id should not 0. And if you want to apply colors for that id, you can apply font color from here. Sorry, font. And message 2, we required 6 messages. Message 2, name should not empty. For email should not empty. For address should not empty. And for gender should not empty. And for hobbies, at least one hobby need to select. Message 6, message 5, message 4, message 3. Okay. And then finally we have properties, validation class and input page. What we required? We required to create one struts-config.xml. So here in this XML file, the main root tag is struts-config. And here form beans. In between form beans and form beans, we have form bean tag, name, emp, and the class name. By using type attribute, we should configure form beans dot employee. That's it. Close this tag and provide action mappings. Action hyphen mappings, action path. Our input page request is reg. That reg and your bean reference name, emp, and validations if you want to execute. Validate equal to true, and to send error messages, input equal to your same input page name. That's it. Finally, your properties file location, message hyphen resources parameter equal to resources slash messages, package name slash base name. That's it. Yeah, that's it. But in web.xml file we should configure one dispatcher servlet, right? Here one servlet name. It can be anything like action, but servlet class org.apache.struts.action. It's an action servlet, and this action servlet need to find out your struts.xml file. To find out that struts.xml file, through init parameters you have to pass your XML file name here, config and param value. It is there in web.inf, right? So web.inf slash struts-config.xml file, and load on startup we required. And finally servlet mapping, servlet name, action, and URL pattern star.do. That's it. Now you can test it. Now here is our form. Why address splitting ID name address. Okay. Open Internet Explorer. Email required, address required, one gender we need to select, at least one hobby need to select. Finally it will try to search for controller. If you have any controller, finally it will execute that controller class. Okay, yeah. So tomorrow I'll show you complete architecture. Okay, email required, address required, one gender we need to select, at least one hobby need to select. Finally it will try to search for controller. If you have any controller, finally it will execute that controller class. Okay.